Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel, History of Us. I am so excited to have you back here with me today. So today we are going to be talking about Mildred Loving. Her name may sound familiar because she was one of the plaintiffs in the monumental case Loving v. Virginia, which we will obviously talk about more later in this video. So without further ado, let's get started. Loving was born July 22, 1939, in Central Point, Virginia. She was nicknamed String Bean as a child because she was so thin. She was part African American and part Cherokee from her mother's side and Rappahannock from her father's side. Her maiden name was Mildred Jetter, so that's her birth name. One of her neighbors was Richard Loving, a white man. They fell in love and got married in Washington, D.C. on June 2, 1958. Their marriage was illegal in Virginia under the Racial Integrity Act of 1924 because they were not the same race, hence the marriage in Washington, D.C. When they returned to Virginia after getting married, they were arrested on July 14, 1958. At this time, interracial marriage was illegal in 24 states. They pleaded guilty and were sentenced to a year in prison. Meanwhile, they moved to D.C. and had 3 kids there, Donald, Peggy, and Sydney. But they missed their home and family. So Mildred wrote to the U.S. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy after the Civil Rights Act to ask if that act would allow her to live with her husband and family in Virginia. He referred her to the American Civil Liberties Union, also known as the ACLU. They assigned them attorneys Philip J. Hirschkopf and Bernard S. Cohen to the case. Because they had originally pleaded guilty to the charges, the Lovings couldn't technically appeal. Therefore, they asked the judge to set aside his original ruling, and when he refused to do that, they appealed. The state Supreme Court upheld the original ruling, so the Lovings appealed to the Supreme Court, which agreed to hear their case. The oral arguments occurred on April 10, 1967, but Richard and Mildred chose not to show up in person. Richard did tell his lawyers, "Tell the court I love my wife, and it is just not fair that I cannot live with her in Virginia." Virginia argued that their law was not discriminatory because it applied to both black and white citizens, and because it protected the racial integrity of all groups. However, the court ruled that it was illegal to outlaw biracial marriage because, clearly, it qualified as discrimination under the Equal Protection and Due Process Clauses of the 14th Amendment. This was a unanimous decision under Chief Justice Earl Warren, who also oversaw Brown versus the Topeka Board of Education, more commonly known as Brown versus Board of Education. His majority opinion stated that preserving racial integrity was not a reasonable enough objective to subject people to racial categorization. The court also stated that this law was created as a reaction to slavery, and preserving racial purity was a way to perpetuate white supremacy. This ruling established that marriage is one of the basic civil rights ensured under the Constitution. In addition to overturning the Lovings' sentence, this ruling ended laws against biracial marriage in 15 other states. Many of these laws were parts of states' constitutions, and Alabama was the last to remove this part of their constitution in the year 2000. After this ruling, Mildred and Richard returned to their families in Virginia, but unfortunately, Richard was killed in a drunk driving incident in 1975. Mildred also lost her right eye in that incident. Years after her case was over, Mildred didn't stop advocating for the rights of the people around her. She came out in support of marriage equality for same-sex couples. On the 40th anniversary of Loving v. Virginia, Mildred issued a statement in which she said, "I believe all Americans, no matter their race, no matter their sex, no matter their sexual orientation, should have the same freedom to marry. Government has no business imposing some people's religious beliefs over others, especially if it denies people's civil rights. I am still not a political person, but I am proud that Richard's and my name is on a court case that can help reinforce the love, the commitment, the fairness, and the family that so many people, black or white, young or old, gay or straight, seek in life. I support the freedom to marry for all. That's what loving and loving are all about." Mildred died of pneumonia on May 2nd, 2008 in Caroline County, Virginia. June 12th is celebrated as Loving Day, and there is now a movie, Loving, which tells the story of Richard and Mildred Loving. It was released in 2016. That is the end of the information I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new about Loving v. Virginia and the people who were a very important part of it. So, if you are interested, the sources I used for this video will be following this, including some notes on how I made this video. Again, thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day!